Topping Talks.
Let's see.
105 hours a week can't be beat. Welcome to Topping Talks. Topping Talks is a Topping Tribune production, and today's episode is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies and ExpressVPN. Topping Talks is also on Spotify, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, and all of your favorite platforms. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with special proficiency IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. I say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or business owner, you can reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, giving away a free Flamethrower with every IT purchase. Go to toppingtechnologies.com to learn more. Also, are you part of the 3.6% of Americans who still care about your privacy? For rather than perfect, ExpressVPN can assist. Even though 96% of stats are mapped on the spot, ExpressVPN does give 100% guarantee via the 30-day MAC guarantee. Now, without further ado, today I'm proud to say I'm interviewing Matt Prescott, who is the Information Technology Security Analyst at Abilene Christian University. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. It's exciting.
Absolutely. So winding back the clock a couple of years, how did you first get into IT?
So I've been kind of dabbling with IT most of my life, way back in the 80s. I think the kids say late 1900s. I had a Commodore 64 as a kid. Got to hook it up to the TV and do a little programming on it. I really had no idea what I was doing. I think there were some instruction sheets, and I would just make objects appear across the screen and go with that. So started off kind of there, and then we had, as a family, in the late, almost early 90s, we had a Tandy PC at home, and so it had the big 5 1/4 two 5 1/4 things, you know, the big old
floppy disks.
Like they were actually floppy, right? You know, you had the little 3 1/4 come out later. They weren't floppy, but these were actually floppy. I remember pushing those in and clicking it down and spinning up. And so got to touch technology here and there through that. In junior high, I took a computer class. And we had a computer lab in there, and we had the big beige computers with we called them turtle screens because they were just green font.
Really?
Is the only font they had. And then in high school, we had 2 computer classes in high school. We had one called computer science and one called computer math. And computer science was kind of just learning about computers, the basics. It wasn't really programming, but just learning basics, macro computers, and you know all that kind of stuff in there. And then math, it was more fun. We got to learn, and we programmed BASIC.
Oh, really?
That's not even Visual Basic. It was like before Visual Basic. It was BASIC on there, and so. Got to create programs in class. I remember one we had a project where we just got to create something, and I made this guy in a hammock, and then it was at night, so I made the pixels go on and off like stars.
Oh, really?
I was proud of myself for that.
That's awesome.
And so kind of went through high school with that, and then mid-90s I graduated, and I was like, hey, I'm going to do computer stuff. I like it. So I started and went to University of North Texas, enrolled. Showed up, started going to class. My first day in computer science class, I come in, and the first thing they talk about is micro and macro computers. And I thought to myself, I learned all this in high school. What do I need to come to this class for?
Right.
I was like, this is basic stuff. Come on, let's get to the good stuff. So I was not quite ready at 18 to go to college yet. I found that out as well. So I went to class for like a couple of weeks, and then I was like, all this stuff is high school stuff. I don't want to go to class. And then ended up dropping out like just before the cutoff deadline you failed class, right? So I was a college dropout, I guess, to begin with. And so that was kind of my intro in it. I kind of had a feel for it, really liked it moving through. After that, I did a couple other kind of jobs here and there. I actually got hired at an engineering firm at like one of my very early on jobs at an engineering firm in Fort Worth.
Really?
I think they got bought out now.
What type of engineering?
It was like
oil
civil
industry?
and those kind of, construction engineering, those kind of things. Different types of it. And so they actually hired me because on my resume, I was like, I knew how to do Windows 95 and some other little computer things. And so what they originally hired me to do, the mail services is what hired me in it. They had this like warehouse full of all these blueprints they've had, and they were wanting to digitize them, and so they were going to buy this huge wide scanner and then scan them all to CD, so engineers could just kind of get them whenever they wanted, and pull them on the computers, or even I think probably eventually have a huge CD stack in the data room where they could just log on to basically map a drive to the CD, and then they could see it from their computers. Right?
Cool.
Which would be really awesome on that. And so it took a while for a budget to get because they had to get a wide enough scanner that would take the blueprints, right? So those weren't cheap.
How big were the blueprints back then?
I don't remember. They were probably at least this wide.
3 foot.
I bet, yeah, probably 3 foot or so. Like the normal, probably blueprints like you see in movies, those kind of big like that.
Oh, yeah.
So you had to have a big enough scanner so you could scan each sheet and come through. But so that was the goal. And then unfortunately, before they were able to buy the scanner and get it, one day when I was driving home from work, which I lived in Jacksboro at the time, so I drove Jacksboro Highway home from Fort Worth. My car caught on fire.
Oh, geez.
How? I don't know. It just started smoking about Springtown, and then I pulled over the road on the side of the road, and next thing I know, it's in flames. But I will say this: I had a
what kind of car was it?
It was a Ford Ranger, 89 Ford Ranger, and
little pickup trucks.
Pickup truck. It was not in great shape anyway, but it was what I had. So it worked. It got me there and back. Until then,
I was gonna say right there,
right?
Yeah.
And so I did it. It was, but I had a CD player in there. I don't think it was a Sony Walkman, but I did have a CD player in there that actually worked after the front half of the truck burned up and there was smoke and stuff in the cab or whatever. But it still worked afterwards. I was like, man, that's amazing.
That's pretty. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I know it still skipped, but when you walk, but it still played on there. So. Had that kind of part IT as well. After that, I kind of took a different direction, and just because of living situations and not having a car, and then trying to figure that out and those kind of things, and so ended up going back to school and decided to go back to school to go into ministry. And I ended up getting my bachelor's, and so I have a bachelor's in church ministry.
Oh, very cool.
So it's a little different background than your normal IT, but the more I hear from people, they usually come around not just IT. A lot of times they come in from different things all over the place.
So what kind of degree is that? Is it studying the history, or
yes.
What's it like?
A little bit of everything. It touched on it. So you study history of the church, and you also study theological things of studying Scripture and pulling things out of that. You also study how to preaching, so public communication, and how to communicate publicly and form sermons, those kind of things. How to manage some things. I focused on youth ministry, and so I got to be the cool guy. At least I think it is. I don't know if my kids thought I was cool, but I thought I was. So I got to be the cool guy in church ministry, youth ministry, and do those kind of things. Have fun a lot.
That's a very unique challenge, just getting their attention, because I participated in that growing up, and it was one of those things where, the leader makes all the difference in the world.
Right, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What was the biggest, most surprising thing you found through that college experience? And then what was your biggest, if not I'm asking, your biggest success story relating to them and getting them involved and really interested?
Right, first of all, it took me a long time to finish college, from start to finish, because I actually was working at a church as I was going to school, so I was commuting. So, and we get like 12 hours a semester when you're having to drive to get to class. And so first of all, it took me, in fact, I finally graduated college 10 years to the month of when I graduated high school. So I took the long path. My wife said I should be a doctor right now, but I'm not, just a bachelor's. And so growing and pulling in that, and just the thing about youth that I figured out after doing it for a good while, biggest challenge was just it takes time. It's not a quick thing, right? And so you have to develop those relationships with that, which helps carry on to other things in life. And developing those relationships with them and growing that. And that's how they gain trust, and that's how you can keep their attention longer than others, because you kind of gain that respect and that trust with them, and being authentic with them and real. And so that's definitely a trait that's carried on even into IT and other things of making that relationship and growing those things with your coworkers and being able to trust them, because I'm very much an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a social person at all. And so I'm the guy that sits in the corner or doesn't want to go to things, right? And so being that introvert, kind of pushing back. Now, if you break my introvert wall and you get in there, then I usually don't shut up, right?
Yeah.
So I just pour out and talk on that. So I was in ministry doing that for a while. Moved to a church, which I stayed. Second church I was at, and stayed there for almost 10 years.
Wow.
But in part of that, that's when I also did IT at this church too. I was big into sound and video production and those kind of things. Somebody needed to do it. I liked it, so I did it too. But I also did like their Wi-Fi network and their office network and running cables and those kind of things. And so it's always kind of been that in the background for me, and just something I've been really interested in. I even set up our own web server and hosted our own web server. It probably wasn't very secure, but
cool.
I hosted it. And then our own web email server service as well. So just kind of having that thing in the background and being making it useful in that. And so part of that too was coming in, and if you didn't know, and your viewers don't know, ministry doesn't pay very much usually. And so I started looking at, hey, how can I like IT. I really like doing those kind of things. Maybe I should try to figure out a way that I could make money on the side or something like that while I still do ministry. And so I ended up going back to a junior college and getting a certificate, because I already had a bachelor's. And so I wasn't going to go through all that again, the bachelor's or getting associates or whatever. So I took their certificate program, which was basically a year, and got in computer information systems, which was basically networking. That was kind of the main focus of the thing. So they did a little bit of server stuff and things, but the main focus was networking, and it was like a Cisco Academy was part of that too. So with that, and so we got to do hands-on stuff and got to do. I really enjoyed that a lot. And while I was there, especially because they got a discount, and at this time I paid for certifications on myself, which I have several today. That I got my A+, which was the 2 tester.
Nice.
And I also got my Network Plus as well while I was there. And so moving on that, did that. I was like, man, this is really good. Got these certs now. And so started looking for a way to move to IT out of ministry. And that, and kind of felt that I was kind of like, I think I'm kind of done here. With this part, I'm going to move to something else, and kind of felt like I had a gift of sorts in there, and also I was getting burned out. It was I stayed at the church almost 10 years, which was great as far as the ministry itself, the kids, those kind of things. I really enjoyed that, but other things, not so much. And so I got to a point where I was burned out. I was probably burned out for at least a year, probably before I actually left and moved.
Oh, really?
Also, part of that towards the end, I did find a part-time job, because the whole time I was like, hey, I need to go. I'm going to get this degree to find that. And so I was able to find a part-time job as a hands-on tech, I guess. There was this international ISP that used satellite technology to broadcast their system, if you will. In there. And so they had a teleport, what they called it, sitting just outside of Vernon. And so if you don't know, up 287, L3, has a internet backbone that runs along 287 from basically Fort Worth, I think, all the way to Amarillo and upward. And so you can hop on to one of the internet backbones there. And so they pulled a station off and built this teleport there that basically, it was kind of cool. It's almost science fiction-ish. They had these 3 big satellites outside, and they kind of had their own building where the cables and everything ran, the core ran into that. And so they had the 3 satellites, and they would have 2 going all the time that would basically, as satellites came across the sky, they would track and follow these satellites. I think they got like 10 gigabits, I think, 5 each way, which was pretty awesome. The latency was crazy fast for satellite on there. And then they had a third one that's kind of a backup, right? If one of these goes down, we're going to set this other one in place so we always have it right on there. And so inside, they had their customer modems is where they had. And so a big part of what I did there was, besides kind of maintenance on these dishes, which in the back of these dishes was kind of looked like a space capsule, like an astronaut space capsule. You go in and they have all these different buttons and different things in there. And they had these huge amplifiers that were heavy. But for whatever reason, they would go out, and they were like high-powered amplifiers that would, push the signal. So we'd have to replace those every now and then. But also, I'd put the modems in. Viasat, I think, was the company of the modem. That wasn't the ISP, but and so I would install when they get a new customer. They'd ship me a modem configured. I'd hook it up to the system and I'd plug it in and let it go. And so they had it. So they have a lot of. Like if you're on an airplane or you're on a cruise ship, right? They don't have internet out in the middle of nowhere, but that's what this company is. They would provide internet out to cruise ships and some government stuff and third world countries that didn't have it and be able to broadcast. So they would, you can get internet just about anywhere.
That's awesome.
Through satellite. So that was pretty cool. And then so one of the customers I did, and I joke about this a lot. Like 2005. So one of the customers putting a modem in for was Skynet. And so I always joke, I was like, sorry, I gave internet access to Skynet. Apparently they were a mobile provider.
What year was this?
That was like 2005 or so, I think. So it's been around a lot. Sorry. AI took over a long time ago.
I was going to say, that's going to be an expensive web domain if they still own that.
That's right. So got to do that a little bit, kind of part-time, hands-on when things need to be, I'd go out there and fix things from time to time or whatever with that. And so from there, I kind of built up, I had this certificate and I had, or certificate from the college. And then I had a couple of certificates and then I kind of had this work and I was looking to jump into IT full-time. So I started applying. I applied to many different places. And then I finally got... through a weird connection, my wife's aunt was best friends with the wife of a guy who worked at an MSP.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's like your second cousin's college roommate kind of thing. And that was an in for me. So I emailed and said, "Hey, I had this weird connection, but I'm looking for a job to be in networking." And sure enough, I got an interview. Weirdly enough. Got an interview, went in. It was a kind of weird. It was like my first real full-time IT job in there. They had just happened to, this MSP had just happened to get a contract to do IT on site for a university in Abilene. Not the one I work at now. So I started off as a help desk for students because the university, at least at the time, I don't know if they still do, gave all new freshmen as part of their tuition laptops.
Really?
And so they
nice.
They weren't fancy,
but
they still work. Yeah. So it was so we would maintain them. Student drops it and the hard drive fails or whatever. Those kind of things. They'd bring it to us and we would fix them.
Out of curiosity, what was the standard back then? Or was it a Dell or Lenovo?
It was HP actually.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was. It was HP. That's what they bought from.
How thick were those laptops back then?
They were. They were a good little thickness. This was probably 2016. 2016. Yeah. So
that's pretty modern.
Super far. Yeah. But yeah, so every year we would order the next generation basically, and the students got to keep them for their 4 years.
Did you take them home after that?
They eventually, yes.
Really?
There was a session where the university would lease them.
Yeah.
So they would have to give them back at the end, right? Mm-hmm. And then they ended up making it to where students could keep them at the end of the 4 years, right? So which was kind of cool.
Makes sense given how much you're going to be using that for all the classes.
Right.
These days.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. It was nice. And then, it's kind of a standard and everybody, you didn't have to use it. I mean, some kids brought their own, right? But
that's
a lot of kids couldn't afford or get their own laptop. And so you get
just with help desk alone, imagine how much less headaches that is if every college student had the same one.
Right.
Because back when I was at University of Iowa, I mean, we still used textbooks back in my day.
Yeah, right.
But like everyone had their own laptop, but everyone had their oin from home, and there was every manufacturer, but they had that quote unquote free to the students help desk.
Right.
So you'd be calling in, trying to get help, going there physically, and that's got to be a fun, challenging job if you got to troubleshoot everything under the sun.
Right.
So that makes sense. Absolutely, to have like one standard for everything. That's a good idea, especially for cybersecurity. Throw some stuff on there.
That's right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it did. It did make it our image, and we got to control them,
There you
and
go.
those kind of things, and it was make it easy to join them to the domain, so they could print and do all that, and all those kind of things. So it was definitely easy on that. It was they had a pretty good program too. So if somebody brought it in and something broke, right? Not just hey, we're going to scan for viruses or whatever. We were able to give them a loaner of the same laptop and then send it off, and HP would fix it and bring it back. It was part of
That's pretty good.
part of their program. So that was also nice.
I was going to say, I know it's probably dating myself yet again, but were the kids using LimeWire in 2016? Is that still around?
I don't know. There was some things that they were definitely. You would come in and do a scan and be like, "You have 200 viruses." I'm like, they're like, "Hey, it's running slow. It's not running great." And we'd scan for viruses and be like, "Well, you have like 200 viruses on your computer, so I don't know what you're going to download free movies or something." We'd be like, "Hey, don't do that."
It's like, this is why it's slow. You got mostly malware.
That's right. You just malware it.
The majority of this laptop is now malicious.
That's right. We're just going to re-image this sucker and then be done with it, right?
Yeah.
That would be easier than that. I hope you didn't need anything on there.
What was the craziest thing you saw or most unusual circumstance?
Let's see here. So I had a couple who would. We had a couple that come in that kids said they just dropped it.
Sure.
But the damage did. That's a pretty good drop. More likely they threw it somewhere or whatever and broke it. Which they would get one kind of free.
When no questions asked kind of situation.
We're gonna send it off and come. Those kind of things. I think we used to keep a running total of who had the most viruses, like scan viruses. It was up in the several hundreds.
Oh my God.
Some of these. There was one that came on, like the screen would just flicker. And then once we kind of figured that out, we actually knew that one of the malware he did actually uninstalled the AV on it.
Really?
And then so we had to like bring in a USB of another AV to stick in like a root killer or whatever and clear that off.
Jeez.
And then we were able to restore all the stuff on it. So that was pretty crazy. I was like, that's really smart.
Yeah.
And working in security, I'll do that a lot. There'll be some attack or there'll be something, and I'll be like, man, that's really smart.
Yeah.
That's that's not good, but they're good for us. But man, that's really smart to think like that, to put that through there. So, did that for a while, moved there. I started working on networking at the same time in there, working with help staff. I had student helpers that could do most of the stuff. Started working on networking for the campus, and we ended up replacing their Wi-Fi access points, and then we ended up replacing their switches and going through. So that was very nice. I remember the first time. Okay, so I went through the course, right, and I had the Network Plus, and then the first time I had to actually log into a switch, I was like, I don't remember how to do that. I had to ask the guy. I was like, hey, how am I supposed to direct connect? I think I've done it remotely.
Yeah.
I was like, how do I use the console cable to plug in and get into that? And then he did. Once I did, I was like, oh, okay, that's easy now.
It's like riding a bike.
It is. Yeah. Once you do it and you remember it, you can do it. There are many things nowadays that I'm like, if I don't write it down or don't use it, then 6 months later I'm like, wait, how did I do that?
Oh, yeah.
Let me Google that again. Yeah. Oh, okay. I remember. Okay. Yeah, that's how I did it. I should have kept notes for that. I should have documented that on the process of doing that. So so there's some things that if I don't use it, I lose it, and then until I have to need it again for something, and be like, oh yeah, I remember that now. What's going on with that? So,
what was it like managing that kind of network and doing a refresh? Because I know, nowadays, shoot, some people, I think that what is the average device count per student these days? It's probably 6 to 8 or even more.
Right. Yeah. Even more
exploding.
for and it's mostly all Wi-Fi, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
everything connects Wi-Fi. So really,
Even fridges these days.
yeah, yes,
and
right.
laundry machines.
Right. And your watch and your phone and everything else is Bluetooth or Wi-Fi on that. And so even where I work now, the couple of new dorms they built in the last couple of years, they didn't put network ports in the rooms anymore.
Really?
They just do Wi-Fi. It's solid Wi-Fi. I think they may have like one port per room, and that's for like if somebody wants to use a network for their PS5 or something like that. But a lot of it, even PS5s are Wi-Fi, smart TVs are Wi-Fi, everything's so you're really going this change of at least in universities of going from a hardwired network infrastructure to a Wi-Fi infrastructure. But then you got to have enough access points and enough bandwidth to handle everybody having 7, 8, 10 devices all at once in that, and being able to stream Netflix and TikTok and all those things that kids see use. So
that's a lot of density. It's like it's only a couple people, but with all the devices, it gets, especially when it's like when you're living at quote unquote at home in the dorm.
Right.
You're not just like, because football stadiums they'll calculate, okay, maybe they have a cell phone, they have they have a couple things,
right.
But if you're in your dormitory, it's like small footprint, but you got all those devices and it's all in the same building. You're gonna need a lot of pipeline, a lot of bandwidth, a lot of APs to make that happen.
Yep.
And also, don't get too many because otherwise you get interference. So it's
Right.
that fun balancing game.
Yeah, they fight over each other, or you're connected to the floor above you or the down. And if you don't have the power just right, and figuring that out. Luckily, I'm not the Wi-Fi admin.
Oh, there you go.
I do not. I am not jealous of him some days, because usually there's some ticket coming in. Hey, my Wi-Fi, the internet doesn't work, and it's not the internet, it's Wi-Fi, and it's just slow.
I almost joke about making T-shirts printed and mugs printed that say it's not the network.
That's right.
So it's always the number one excuse when something happens. It's like, no, it's not. I'll show you the screenshot. I'll show you it's not the network.
Right. It's not the network. It's not the firewall either. Yeah. That's what I usually people come to me and like, hey, this isn't working. Can you check to see if you're blocking something? I'm like,
I could check, but
I can tell you off the top of my head, that's not it. It's probably DNS. That's right. It's DNS with that.
And then what was it like going from the help desk to getting to the networking? Right. Any advice for people trying to kind of traverse a career? Because I know a lot of people get siloed and they're always thinking, how do I get to that next role in IT?
Right. So for me, when I first came on, networking and security was kind of the two things I kind of had in mind. Of course, back then I thought security, I wanted to be a hacker, right? I wanted to be a pen tester, and that. But I love networking, so I love the two together in that. And so for me, it was like, I really enjoy that. I like that. And so kind of coming from a help desk role, working on computers and figuring things out, which is I find very important for me because that gives me a real basics of things, especially troubleshooting. If you're trying to troubleshoot something and you don't understand how the basics work, and you start at layer one, or you start at that to the troubleshooting things of computers of, okay, is that software or is that their hardware NIC? Or does that go beyond and into the network and things with that? Where does that start and how to troubleshoot that? So having that information of the basics of Windows or Mac or Linux or those kind of things in that, and kind of figure out how is this supposed to work in there. And some of that stuff is, like I mentioned before, I don't use it, so I lose it and I forget and be like, until I Google it and be like with that. But moving over, I kind of just had that kind of opportunity there, kind of set itself up for it to move into that. And the advice I would give is to figure out what you really want to do, what you like. Now, it may take you a while to get there. There may be steps put in place for you to get there directly. But take those steps. Learn on the back end. Find out from, if you're already in tech or you're in a help desk, most likely you're going to have a network guy on your team, or you're going to have something else on your team that whether it's system administration and working with servers, or it's Wi-Fi or it's security, or those kind of things in there. Wherever you're at, find that guy on your team and ask him. Ask them questions. Ask them, hey, what is this? Hey, I got this ticket in and they think it's this, right? I'm going to send this to you, but hey, I want to help you with this, or I want to find out. So what was the issue there with that? I want to learn about that. I want to gain that, and so finding that interest and getting the interest in what you want to do, and finding people who do that, and then communicate with them and get them, because for the most part, people are very willing to open up and discuss and get that from you, and to help you out with that, and to help you learn with that. If for nothing more, that they can share their knowledge in that, and maybe even get an extra little help somewhere. Especially if you're the help desk people. You're the first line of defense. Like, you're the ones that get the call. And if I'm a network guy and I can teach you a few network things for me, that kind of offloads something, because now you have more knowledge about networking. If you get a networking ticket come in, then you might be able to dig a little further and get something that might be super simple for the network guy to figure out, right?
Sure.
And then you can help that out, and you can save that from moving up to there. In that. And then that also shows you, hopefully to your manager or whoever that is, initiative to say, hey, I'm learning this and I'm really interested in this and I want to kind of move into this. And here's how I'm doing that. Here's how I'm working through that. And so, and I think that goes with anything, of any move or whatever, is just to get it. And, today, even more than in 2016 and stuff, when I started in there, there is tons of YouTube videos that are free, or tons of free stuff out there. And while most of it's good, there's some that not so great, or just from information, not knowledge or whatever. But there's tons and tons of stuff out there that you can go and learn and watch and figure out, and try to get that knowledge. And then you got questions about something, find somebody who works in that and ask them with that. As introverted I am, and as much as I don't want to be a burden to someone and ask them about something, right, that might know. I've yet to find someone in the IT community who, if I have a question, even though, I might think there's some, big person on social media from IT or whatever, that's like, hey, don't bother me. Right. They're usually more than welcome to share what they know, and share what they have. So, definitely reach out, even if you're unsure or scared to, or whatever else in that, make that first step. I mean, that's not going to cost you anything. And hopefully most of the time you're going to learn something from it or get something back from it, because they're going to share with you or point you in the right direction or something like that. So, yeah.
Now, what was it like moving to the new role?
So moving to the new role, I in that MSP, I worked at that university for probably 2 of my 4.5 years at the MSP, and from there I got to move back to the office and do networking full time.
Nice.
So actually for the MSP and other customers, which was tons of fun. I love that. And then I also got to do some security stuff. So I started doing vulnerability scans for customers, and then kind of giving reports on that. Here's where your vulnerabilities are. And doing some others. I also got to do some firewall stuff.
Nice.
And made that a part of it, which is lots of fun. Most of the time. I guess that's for anything in IT.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun most of the time, but there's some times where you're like, oh, I'm really tired of that. So from that, moving on, trying to get that, doing that security stuff. And basically how I got into security on that part was I told them, and bosses actually when I started or whatever, I was like, hey, I want to do security too. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, hey, we'll get you on a path, right? You're not doing it today. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. But we're going to get you on a path to work you to get you to where you need to be. And so I did that. I did vulnerability scanning. And then towards the end of my time at the MSP, I actually got my CISA. So my CISA, Certified Information Security Auditor or Systems Auditor. I think Systems Auditor is the actual term on that. And then also I had a really good thing about the MSP is they were very much about providing and putting into your learning and getting certificates. So every year they want you to get something new, right? To keep you fresh, keep you learning and that. So, I've now I think I have like 7 or 8 certificates where
nice.
I'm at now. So from the A plus, Net plus, Security plus, CYSA. I just recently got my CASP where I work now, CASP plus there. And my CISA, CCSP for cloud, a whole different kind of hodgepodge, if you will, different areas of security that I've kind of gone and like, hey, this is important to my role. I want to learn more about this and get this. And so,
out of curiosity, what was the most satisfying certificate that you got, and which one's your favorite? Challenging or satisfying, or both?
That's a good one. I want to say that initially, my CCNA was, because I did get that. I let that go just because I wasn't doing networking anymore and I'm moving more to security, even though I use networking every day, just about. So I think that was one of my, that was also, I did the 2-parter for back, that was probably 2015, 2016 there. I did the 2-parter. So I took the first one and got my CCENT, right? Back when they had all the different little ones. And then the CCNA. And so that was the first time of all the certs I took that I failed one on the first time. And I probably failed it by 2 questions, I think, because they don't tell you the questions. They just give you a score. And I'm like, that's pretty close. Dang it.
Yeah,
and I was paying for it myself at that time. So I was like, even worse. I was like, okay.
It was that up.
But I retook it, passed it the second time. It was great. So got the CCNA. And then I had a CCNA Cyber Ops when it first came out because they had like this, Cisco had like this $10 million scholarship thing they were doing basically to get people to take this Cyber Ops. Of course, so I applied for it, got allowed to it, and I was able to take the courses with that, take both tests. Cisco paid for it all.
Nice.
And that was nice on there. And that was very much a kind of a security analyst, incident response kind of thing. And what I really liked about it, at least at the time, was it wasn't Cisco centric like, most of their certs are. Yeah. It was more of a more vague in that.
More conceptual.
More conceptual, more like incident response. So it was, Cisco didn't have incident response. Like, you don't have a incident response switch, right? Those things. So it's more of gathering that out and tools that they didn't have yet to, do logs and SIM and those kind of things back before they had that in their repertoire for that. So, but able to move through that and get those skills. But I would say those are probably my favorite. I think my current favorite and the one that was like I wasn't sure if I could pass it when I first started studying for it. I was like, my CASP, my CASP, because it's like, on the website they say you need like 10 years and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll study it. And as I began to study, I realized, wow, like a lot of that stuff I do now. I've touched it somewhere in the job I have now, and I understand that. I understand that part, and I understand that part, and okay, I get that. So started studying. So I think that would be my current favorite of them all of this kind of top level security certification that spans things, spans a whole lot of different things. And I was able to go in and felt like, hey, I actually feel comfortable in that. I actually comfortable knowing these subjects and the domains in there of things going through. So, I think that would be my current favorite. And the thing I won't say got a lot out of, but more of reassured what I think I know, right? And to be confident in that, moving through that. So that would be my favorite at the time.
Awesome.
So I moved from the MSP, and then I was looking for something. I was actually looking for 2 things in a new job. One, I wanted to do security full time, even though I love networking. I wanted to move in and focus on security. And also, my daughter was entering high school, and so I was like, "How am I going to pay for college?"
Yeah, it's pretty petty.
Right, that's right. And so it just so happens that the university where I work at now, ACU, they had an opening for a security analyst. And I was like, great, security full-time, and my daughter will get a tuition discount. So
There you go.
score.
Win-win.
That's right. Win-win on that. And so started there. I'll be honest. So imposter syndrome hit me a lot. It hit me at the MSP as well, of like when customers would call, I'd be like, man, if I don't have the right answer, I don't know. It would like really weigh me down, and make me anxious and almost fearful sometimes of, and I don't think the customer was like that, but it was just my own thoughts of, if they ask a question or they have some deep whatever and I can't answer it immediately or within the first few minutes, man, I'm letting them down, right? Because they're paying me to know this and I don't know it. And so that kind of got me in. And I say that because when I interviewed for the security analyst job, the job itself was much more than I've done security-wise. Like I've had that vulnerability management. I've had kind of I've had some certs and stuff in it and learning that. And I had my security plus and all that kind of stuff. And but at the end, so when they came back and they said, "Hey, we want to offer you this job. Do you want it?" I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I need to think about that, right? And that was, for me, imposter syndrome, huge. Basically, saying, "Hey, you can't do this," right? When they asked me questions during the interview, there are several things that I had no clue what they were. I was like, I don't know any of that, right? I don't know what that is, and here you are asking me if I know it on that. And so I literally was like, I don't know if I can take it. Which my interviewer, my boss now, was like, well, you need to decide because we're ready to make an offer, right, and make a package, but you got to tell me you want it before we're going to do that. So I was like, all right, let me think about it. And my wife was like, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Like, just do it, right? Yeah. And so I ended up taking it. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'll accept. I'll take it. Whatever. Scared to death because I won't know how to do things. And in the beginning, I knew more than I thought I did, but I still didn't know some things, right? But the environment of great work environment of it didn't really matter. I could learn it. I could figure it out. And a lot of things I have over the past 4 years, I've learned so much about security and how it works in an organization and how you implement things and kind of the processes and stuff that go into that and creating those things and just securing organization in that. And so, and my boss reminds me from time to time too. He's like, "Hey, you remember back when I first hired you and you were like, you didn't want it?" Right? I'm like, he's like, look at you now, right? And I'm like, yeah, right. Like at the time I was like, I'm scared to death of doing this. Imposter syndrome just overwhelmed me with that. And I almost didn't take it, but I did. And here I am now and I'm doing great. I have a good feeling that I would most likely be very confident or more confident in saying, yeah, I can do that. Even if I don't maybe not know it fully, I'm more confident now that say, yeah, I can do that, or I can learn that. I can figure that out, in the basics of that. And so that was kind of a big hit and struggle for me at the very beginning, going into that. And now that I'm in it, man, I've touched so many different things. I'm a team of two is what we say. I'm the hands-on security guy. My boss is the other security person. He's a director, so he gets to do the fun managerial kind of things and those kind of stuff in it. And I'm the hands-on guy. And so doing all the different things and all the different hats of security aware, a lot of that is me almost being a manager of sorts myself of, hey, we found this vulnerability on this system. I don't fix that. But I take it to the systems team and say, hey, we have this and they fix it. Or I go to the apps team and we figure it out and they fix it, in that. And so, and that kind of comes back to the thing I started to at the beginning of, having that relationship and be able to, have that relationship, even with people that you're like, oh man, they really annoy me. But, that relationship of them trusting you, which grows. It takes time, right? My boss comments at least the last couple of years of stuff in my performance reviews of. He's like, I'm really glad and see that people will just walk into your office and ask you questions about stuff, and they don't go through him, right? They come straight to me of it because they're like they know they trust you in your knowledge and your experience in that, and not that I always have the answers. They'll come in and ask me questions, and I thinking really hard. I don't really know what the answer to that is, or how we would do that, or what's the risk in that? Is there a risk in that? Do I really care one way or the other, kind of thing? In that, and so sometimes I'm still like, I don't really know what that exact situation. But I'm okay to say that, or okay to work through, and we work through and talk things out, and try to figure out what we got going on there, and the best way to answer their question, whatever that may be, on that. And so, working through that, having that, being able to have that relationship, even though I'm very much an introvert. Of course, most the other IT people are too, I think. But when you grow with your team and you build that bond and that trust between each other, then it makes it. And it's also nice that it's a fairly laid back workplace, fun workplace to be. Those kind of things. A great work environment in there, and that also helps amongst the team. And we joke and laugh a lot too as we go through. And so, moving that into full-time security and looking at that and learning different things and touching a lot of different areas in that. I had a friend of mine, I was talking to him, I was like, man, I do all these things. Like I'm kind of wore down, and I'm like burnout is sensing there of what all this stuff I think I'm doing or whatever, and haven't. And I'm like, I don't know. And he was like, well, look at the blessing part of it. The other side of it is, look at all these things in security you're learning. Like you're not just doing vulnerability management and only know about vulnerability management. You're not just doing incident response. You're not just doing, these kind of niches that can all be teams of people or even one people in an organization. This is their thing. You're getting this kind of overview of all these different areas, and while you may not dive deep into each one, you're able to learn and glean from those things and that. And so, I try to look at it that way sometimes when I'm like, man, there's just so much here and so much we're doing and trying to do. And in that of, coming back and just thinking about, oh, well, look at this. I've touched that part, and I've touched this part of security, and I wore these different hats and different things in there. And so I'm like, hey, that's experience, and that's things that are going on different areas of learning those, and not just being in a one niche thing and moving through that. So that's also a perk and excitement, at least right now in the journey season I'm in, with security, that while that was overwhelming at first, and almost didn't have me take the job, learning those things and moving through those things, that's been a great experience and a great joy underneath, even though sometimes it doesn't look like that, right?
Oh yeah. Well, it's really exciting because there's more variables in cybersecurity than any other sector of IT, really. Cause,
right.
I mean, infrastructure it can be neat, but in terms of like innovation and variables, there's basically like 2 or 3, maybe 4 like server manufacturers. After Hewlett Packard Enterprise is going to buy Juniper Networks, there's going to be realistically 3 or 4 networking companies. But with cybersecurity, there's more. Bad guys are never going to stop, and there's more and more solutions every day, and more vulnerabilities and areas of attack. The attack surfaces are like growing. Right. So that's why I also find it just especially fascinating, that part of IT. Just to me is really cool. Yeah, and security touches everything. Oh, yeah. And it's because even I talked about some of, because I'm on the my boss is over systems infrastructure and the security, and so we're all kind of in that, and I'm like, I've asked sometimes too about, well, should security be their own thing? Because security touches systems, security touches infrastructure, security touches apps, security touches data. Security also touches people when we're training and trying to keep them to not click on phishing links and look at phishing email, right? So it's something that's kind of
it even goes beyond IT in that sense too, of looking at of how spread out and how much it's covered and how important it is, hitting a lot of different areas in that, making that kind of known, because I've always heard that security isn't necessary to business, right? You can run a business without being out security, right? It's not a great idea.
Short term.
Short term, right? It's not a great idea. It'll cost you in the end, but you don't necessarily have to have it to run a business, right? Like on the flip side of that, you kind of, on the other hand, you kind of need it, right? And then usually security is not I'm going to invest this money and look at all this money I'm going to make and come back for this, right?
Yeah.
It's more of I'm going to invest in this and maybe I don't have to pay millions in a ransom, kind of thing. But I won't ever know that, hopefully, because if I invest right in security, we won't ever have that problem.
A lot of people see it as a sunk cost. It's hard to quantify.
Yes.
It's one of those things where, especially, if security works perfectly, nothing ever bad happens.
Right.
You can show how many things are being blocked, but CFOs, I guess every once in a while they'd like to hear, oh yeah, we decreased the cost of our cybersecurity insurance because we got XYZ tools.
Right.
But still, that's still money. CFO might be like, well, yes, but
we're putting all this money. What's this doing for me? Right? Because it's hard to really see sometimes in that.
Or the chief revenue officer is going, well, hey, we use some more budget because we actually make money. Why do you guys need XYZ firewall or antivirus or EDR, XDR? What do you need that for, really?
Yeah. Why do you really need that? Yeah,
every department needs budget. Everyone, a lot of people always, everyone likes to think their role is the most important thing. Every department thinks so. It's like, gotta have that balancing act. But without security, I'm a little biased. Obviously, I work in cybersecurity too. But it's like, without security, you have nothing.
Right.
Because like one hack, shoot, you could be out of business for good.
Right. Yeah, absolutely on that. And also the process of looking at, security is there, but security is not there to just be secure. Security is there to help the business do what the business does to make money or whatever else. And how can security be best implemented to do that?
Yep.
And also implemented of not causing too much friction, but still being secure, right? The whole, the users are griping because they have to do this, but that's the secure way to do it. And how do you balance that, right?
What do I need? What do you mean I need to use multi-factor authentication on my cell phone? What do you need? Why do I need an app?
Yeah, exactly. What do I got? I got to put a number in here now after I put my password.
Why does my password need to be more than 4 characters? Well, you see.
That's right. Now I got to have an extra Post-it note to stick my MFA code here next to my password here. Yeah.
Right, on my desk right there. It's like,
oh no. Absolutely. So, anyway, so that's kind of the journey. My journey through IT of going through and kind of where I'm at now, looking at future. I'm like, cloud something I haven't dabbled a lot in, a little bit, but like it's there, which is funny because years and years ago I was like, this cloud thing, it's just a fad. It's gonna, but now it is, it's all here on that, and so cloud something. Pen testing, I think, is still something I want to do now that I've been in it long enough to know that the sexiness of it is not as sexy on the back end because there's report writing, which
that's a big part. That takes a lot of man hours to do.
It does on there, and so that's something else I'm interested in. Bug bounties is something I do kind of part-time off and on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So,
what have you found in the past? Where do you like to go?
I did, see what I found. Let me explain how. So I do bug bounties for a while. And then when I don't find nothing, I usually get frustrated and I'm like, I'm not going to do this for a while. Mm-hmm. And I'm in that season right now of I'm not doing this. I'm frustrated because I can't find anything on it. But I have found... so the one I've gotten paid for, which I was happy with, I found a subdomain takeover. And so basically this company had a C name, their C name pointing to a subdomain that was no longer taken or registered. And so I was able to go create that subdomain and and then which now their CNAME now pointed to this domain that I created, this web page I created on there, and so that was a cool one I did.
That's pretty neat.
It was. I found another one. I didn't get paid for this one because it was a kind of like a see something, say something kind of thing. I forget what the term is for it now. But with the company, I was able to. I found some. There was like this huge leak, credential leak, right? So I was able to copy the thing, and so I had tons of credentials for tons of different things. And I was able to find this machine and this domain name and use these leaked credentials to RDP to this machine. And then I turned it in. I was like, sweet. I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm going to turn this in and hopefully I get paid. That was like one of the first ones I ever found. And then they're like, oh, well, this is not a paid pro. I was like, oh, my gosh. Okay. It should be because it'd be like worth lots of money.
Not even a tip. Come on now.
That's right. I'm like, oh, come on now. So anyway, apparently there was they said it was a DNS something. Basically, a DNS was pointing to something that they didn't no longer had, to a machine they no longer had, which I was like, yeah, but how was I able to log into that thing then? What's going on there? Anyway. So I've had a couple that were there. I've had a couple of other things that were duplicates, which is a big thing in bug bounty because they only pay the first one, right? So the first one that gets it, they get it. So I don't get frustrated too much with duplicates, mostly because I don't get a lot, because I don't get a lot of them at all. But I'm like, hey, if it's a duplicate, that means somebody else who probably knows what they're doing found it. So that tells me, hey, I'm on the right track. It kind of helps me feel better about myself, I guess, if you do that, to say, hey, I did something that somebody else got paid for. So, I mean, I'm not getting paid. I know I'm on the right track. I'm doing some things right to find those kind of bugs and vulnerabilities in there. So, but yeah, it's interesting. Right now, I'm kind of in a season where I'm going back and being like, okay, I don't know how to do this or that, and I'm reading through a book, some books on bug bounty, and kind of how to do it and learn more about the vulnerabilities itself in there before actually jumping in hands-on with it a little more. So, but that's also interesting to kind of read through of how these vulnerabilities work and how to find them and some ways to get around, some protections, those kind of things of people put in place to try to protect it, and looking through that. So that's interesting to me too. I think it's for me the most interesting thing with that is the whole. I love to solve puzzles. Yeah. Like I love to help people and troubleshoot and solve the problems, right, and solve the puzzles. And so part of bug bounty is figuring out and solving the puzzle, right, and figuring out the missing pieces and finding that thing that shouldn't be available but is available, kind of in there. And so moving through that's a big part, a fun part for me in moving through that.
Absolutely. What kind of other things do you like to do outside the office?
Spend time with family. I like to watch TV. Some. I'd have to say one of my favorite things to do, which is very simple and very plain, is and especially now that the weather's cooler here in Texas, right, or at least for this week, is going out with a glass of tea or a cup of coffee and just sitting on my back porch when it's like 60 degrees outside and there's a slight breeze or whatever, and the sun's coming up or the sun's going down, and just sitting out and just kind of enjoying the peace of life with that. So that's one of my kind of, if I had a hobby, that would be one of my kind of favorite hobbies, of just looking and just kind of relaxing from everything, stepping back from everything, and just kind of enjoying, just thinking about life, dreaming about what could be, and those kind of things, right? And just letting it go. And that's definitely a fun thing for sure. My son's playing sports now, so we get to go. He's in football season, so we get to go watch footballs, whatever. He's also in taekwondo, so he's moving up in that and getting close to his black belt in another probably 6 months or so. So we're excited about that and looking through that. So it's kind of, he keeps me active. My daughter started college this year, so she's in that kind of phase of life as well. So it's a good time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, man, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it, man.
Oh,
Let's
absolutely.
have you on again soon.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Don't forget, Topping Talks is also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major streaming platforms. Also, don't forget to take time to like, subscribe, and comment. And lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and have a great day. Topping Talks.